The Krone Empire extended across a vast stretch of the Andromeda Galaxy, with its technological marvels and advanced civilization envied by many worlds. Despite the Empire's expanding influence, the Krones remained deeply isolationist, convinced of their superiority over other species. This arrogant belief led them to underestimate the humans when the first survey ships contacted Earth over 2 centuries ago. Barson's elongated eye stalk swiveled in frustration as he reviewed the latest reports from the observation team on Earth. As a prominent xenoanthropologist, he had been among the first to champion studying this strange new species discovered on the remote, humid world. Yet, after decades of research, the humans remained as baffling and contradictory as ever. Observe their technological progression, his superior had instructed. Clearly an emergent sapient species, ill-prepared to join our empire. File a developmental assessment and schedule revisitation in 2 planetary cycles. When they finally advanced beyond combustion engines and primitive weaponry, those orders now seemed ignorant, as the humans defied all conventional models. Their cultural progression was erratic, and with major civilizations regressing into dark ages only to rebound spectacularly with technological surges. Their technological development also leaped forward in fits and starts, with powerful discoveries emerging from violent conflicts as often as peaceful pursuits of knowledge. But it was their biology that truly confounded Krone science. Having evolved under constant environmental pressures on a world rife with deadly microbes and apex predators, the human form was incredibly resilient yet wondrously fragile. Crushing gravities that would liquefy Krones were survivable for humans, who could exist in environmental extremes from frozen tundras to scorching deserts. Yet the slightest exposure to a common mold species could prove fatal. Most perplexing were the contradictions of the human mind. Logic, reason, and brilliant quantitative abilities coexisted with unpredictable emotion, remarkable creativity, and seemingly endless diversity of thought. Vin's own brilliant intellect had been unable to decipher whether humans were fundamentally primitive savages or emerging savants. When the Hutter invasion force entered the Milky Way 2 cycles ago, the Krones had no choice but to act. The Genesis Protocol aimed to accelerate humanity's development as a potential military asset against the implacable foe. Vin was assigned to the intervention team, using advanced nanotechnology and genetic recoding to selectively boost human cognitive abilities and physiology. Of course, genetic amelioration was highly illegal under Krone law, but if the fledgling humans exhibited the potential to fight the Hutter scourge, the risk was worthwhile. The Krones would properly develop this infinitely malleable new species as powerful warriors to safeguard the Empire. The effects of the Uplift program quickly became evident, radically accelerating human technological progress in mere decades. Brilliant human theorists and engineers emerged, blending the Empire's advanced science with burgeoning new concepts like electricity, electromagnetic radiation, and computational analytics. But just as swiftly, unintended consequences manifested. The nano-coded genetic enhancements aimed at boosting aggression, resilience, and cognitive stamina achieved unanticipated expressions. Defiance and willful resistance to authority spiked in many human populations. Emboldened by their newfound abilities, some rejected assimilation into the Krone Empire, becoming violent independence movements. Most disturbing were the growing bands of terrifying human killer specialists who actively sought combat and seemed to revel in the savagery of warfare. Vin shuddered as he reviewed footage of heavily augmented super soldiers battling the Hutter legions alongside Krones, yet with minimal armor and relatively primitive projectile weaponry. The humans waded into hordes of acid-spewing, bladed Hutter warriors, sustaining grievous wounds that should have been fatal. Yet, instead of fleeing, the crimson-soaked humans fought with even greater ferocity, engaging in brutal melee attacks with blade and bludgeon when their ammunition ran dry. Other reports documented human insurgent groups retaking entire cities from Hutter occupation, slaying thousands of towering aliens with little more than crude explosive devices and basic disruptors. Wherever the most intense combat raged across Earth and human colonial worlds, super-augmented killer humans gravitated to join the fray with almost gleeful abandon. It became clear the genetic uplifting had been too successful. The very traits intended to make humans a controllable military force for the Krone Empire enhanced strength, stamina, aggression, and logical capability had somehow combined with an intrinsic human savagery and defiant individuality to create something frighteningly unpredictable, dangerous, and unstable. Yet even as his generals grew increasingly wary of humanity's darker angels, Vin could not help being awed by their heroic deeds. When the Hutter rained planet-killer missiles on the overcrowded refugee world of Haven Prime, it was elite human commando units who infiltrated the alien ships and prevented the apocalyptic detonations. During the Battle of Jory Prime, human mercenary regiments rescued and evacuated over 300,000 Krone civilians cut off by advancing Hutter forces, suffering over 90% casualties in the process. Most incredible was footage from the Hutter siege of Barner City, where 1 million Krone civilians were trapped under a cyclonic acidic bombardment. Against all tactical calculations, a mere 500 human volunteers launched an outnumbered, unarmored frontal assault into the screaming hurricane of corrosive death. Miraculously, the insane berserker charge allowed the vast majority of civilians to be safely evacuated before the city was finally overrun and incinerated. Madness, pure madness. Vin had heard a Krone general proclaim in a transmission seized from the doomed city. No logic, no self-preservation, just a willingness to sacrifice themselves against impossible odds for the sake of others. What manner of beings are these humans? Beings of defiance, unpredictability, and infuriatingly incalculable spirit, Vin mused as he continued reviewing the records. Always doing the illogical, the inadvisable, the seemingly impossible. 100 worlds later, as Krone and human forces battled in a final decisive campaign to drive the Hutter back from the Andromeda Galaxy, Vin could only watch in awe as incredible new human capabilities seemed to spontaneously manifest in the heat of every engagement. On the sweltering radioactive world of Kyler, human infantry somehow crossed an 8-kilometer expanse of open, irradiated terrain to deliver a devastating assault on alien artillery positions, a feat that should have resulted in instantaneous death. Later, when Krone landing forces were bogged down by an impenetrable electromagnetic minefield at the Battle of Arn Ridge, human combat engineers created a series of outrageous jury-rigged countermeasures that allowed the massive assault to continue. Time and time again, whenever a tactical situation appeared hopeless, some previously unknown human solution would unhinge the stalemate and propel the war effort forward at great cost. Each ingenious breakthrough was inevitably followed by human troops voluntarily sacrificing themselves en masse to safeguard alien civilians or press a vital strategic advantage. The final climactic battle of the campaign to retake the Krone homeworld was a perfect encapsulation of the defiant, resilient, and selfless human spirit. As the massive Krone armada fought through the last Hutter defensive cordon, a salvo of orbital spatial warheads shattered the lead battleships. On the brink of failure, the massive blown-open husks of the ruined dreadnoughts were suddenly, inexplicably boarded and seized in high-risk, unarmored desert hull assaults. Against all tactical logic and prediction, the broken-backed hulks were rapidly resurrected by human engineering cruise weapons brought back online, life support restored. For 7 desperate days, the battleships held the crumbling defensive line against endless Hutter counterattacks as Krone reinforcements mustered for the final grueling ground invasion of their ancestral homeworld. Miraculously, the selfless and improbable actions of those human suicide crews saved billions of Krone lives and allowed the Empire to ultimately prevail in the Second Hutter War. Yet only a small minority of the boarding parties survived the sustained orbital bombardments and vicious close-quarters battles to secure the Krone legacy. Their charred remains found huddled around makeshift human-fabricated stations all across the wreck-strewn ships. As the last fires of the Great Conflict were finally extinguished and the Hutter invaders permanently expelled from Krone space, Vin realized the true, staggering impact of uplifting this phenomenal new species. Krone warriors openly wept in awe. Human independence movements no longer had to convince anyone of their superiority over the client races of the Empire. By their sacrifice and unbelievable resilience in the face of impossible odds, the descendants of those first incredible subjects had not only earned their rightful place as partners in the Krone Confederacy, but in their determination to protect those who could not defend themselves. Despite all xenophobic assumptions, the humans had become the saviors of the Krone people. The indelible spirit of defiant selflessness and heroic perseverance had transformed them into avatars of nobility and courage beyond measure, an inspiration to all species everywhere. The elderly Vin's eye stalks drooped as he recalled the most difficult, haunting decision in his long career as a scientist: how to prevent this remarkable, transcendent people from ever again being exploited or oppressed by the Krones or any other force in the galaxy. The conclusion was as irrefutable as it was heretical. Reaching into an encrypted portable transmission unit, Vin initiated a tight beam data burst to the human colonial leadership on their thriving new world of Gaia Prime. The final piece of forbidden nanological research coded within would allow the brilliant human scientists to fully unlock and recreate the genetic uplifting process that had forever altered their species. They had earned the right to control their own evolution, whatever astonishing metamorphosis that liberation might unleash. As humanity ascended among the stars, Vin's hand trembled slightly as he transmitted the encrypted data to Gaia Prime, knowing this final act could be considered racial treason of the highest order. But he had seen the truth with his own eyes over the long, bloody campaign. The human strive for independence and self-determination could never again be shackled, no matter how benevolent crone oversight might be. The explosive growth of their formidable abilities, once the genetic genie was out of the bottle, was simply too unpredictable, too powerful to be contained or regulated by any external force, even an advanced civilization like the crones. The humans had to be allowed to chart their own destiny among the stars, free to evolve and ascend into whatever incredible reality their unique gifts might manifest. With the data packet containing keys to unlocking and even expanding on the uplifting process now in human hands, Vin knew he might have just ensured their rise as the predominant influence over the entire Milky Way galaxy in the ages to come, perhaps even beyond into the vast cosmos. As their unrealized potential blossomed, fully untamed and unshackled, a small tremor of trepidation passed through the xenoanthropologist's neural clusters. He hoped the humans would remember the noble lessons